Hello readers, I'm Amy, and today I'm finally going to wrap up the months of books that I haven't talked about, and we're going to build my cats a new tower. This is the current cat tower. I've kind of disassembled it. These two pieces were here and here. You can see just how torn to shreds this cat tower was. This is a box. That's the actual new gift for my cats. Forget a cat tower for my cats. I just got them a giant box to play in. I think Amadeus is actually the only one who really cares about boxes, though. Yeah, I considered doing, maybe trying drag makeup or just doing my makeup and talking about books. But it just seemed like a lot of effort, and for some reason building a cat tower does not seem like a lot of effort, so we're going to build a cat tower and we're going to talk about books. This is my office. I'm not sure if I've actually given you guys a thorough tour yet. I posted on Instagram recently that my office needed a refresh, so I dusted everything. I put in some LED lights that I am quite excited about. I think it looks pretty awesome. I've got these light up letters that spell out create. I haven't figured out where I'm going to put them yet. I have my Cher poster from the second Cher concert that I went to, my Lucille Ball poster, and then these perfume posters are from work, because I work at Ulta at the moment. And whenever I change out the fragrance end caps, I take home a poster or two. I moved my flowers. They were in the other corner. Here is my little T-Rex guy. I can't remember if we got him in LA or in Denver. This is one of my current nonfiction reads. It's about graphic design and book covers. And this is where the cat tower is going to go. Right next to the litter box that we hide in the closet, which I think was actually pretty genius. So here is the new cat tower, just all in pieces. I think this is the base. In the last couple months, I've started posting kind of reading month updates. So I'm just going to use that to figure out, hey, what books have I read in the last couple of months? As many of you may know, I haven't really filmed in the last couple months. I've been going through some things that I'm not really going to go into. Started posting. I've had 3 videos up in the last couple weeks, and then last week I didn't post because, again, life. So I want to take a chance to do a wrap up, but I wanted a wrap up to be a little more than me just sitting in front of my bookshelves, because that gets tedious for me to try and film and try and talk, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have another book to talk about. This is going to give me something to do. So we're going to start off with The Alienist by Machado de Assis. I'm working on 2 different kind of read the world reading challenges on Storygraph. I can link those down below, but The Alienist is a Brazilian novella. It's a classic, and it's basically about this guy who lives in a time where there are no psychiatrists. He's trying to come up with these kind of rules to determine who is and is not mentally ill. It's very short, it's very fun. It almost reads like Jane Austen, if Jane Austen talked more about mental health and mental illness, because it's this huge social commentary on how we determine who needs help with mental illness, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. The copy that I read was about 160 pages, but the story itself I think was only 100 pages, and then 60 of it were just notes on the time period and the history of psychology. Or maybe it was 60 pages and the history of psychology was 100. Either way, it's short, it's very well written. I think it's a great just kind of discourse on society. So yeah, would recommend. So the next book that I read after that was the Argentinian novel Tender is the Flesh. I do already have a standalone review on that. It was just as excellent as it was the first time that I read it. So if you're into horror, specifically cannibalism horror, if you find that interesting, definitely try picking that up. Also, if you hear any crashes and bangs in the background, he found the toy. Of course he found the toy that attaches to the cat tower. So, he's having a good time with that. So then, next novel was The Best We Could Do by T. Bui. This was a story from a Vietnamese author, and her parents were immigrants to America. And it's a graphic novel. It's really beautifully illustrated, really beautifully told. I remember it was kind of a memoir because it's kind of about the author herself and a certain part of her life. And it's kind of a biography about her parents' lives, but it's also kind of an autobiography because it's more than just a specific area of her life. It was so many different historical aspects, and it's just this nonfiction graphic novel tale, and it was so beautifully told, and I think I remember crying through parts of it, just as they talk about her parents being immigrants and everything. I had an amazing time with that book. I believe it was 5 stars after I read it. Then we have Daphne Du Maurier. I picked up another one of her books. This one was The Doll, which was a series of short stories. Like all of her other short story collections that I've read, I thought it was brilliant. She really speaks to me as an author. Okay, so I might have just taken apart everything I did because I'm talking about books and filming and trying to follow instructions, so I had to fail at one of those things. Next up, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. This is a classic that's been sitting on my shelf for 2 years now-ish, that I picked up at one of the book sales at my local friend's little library. I kind of have mixed feelings. Like, overall, I did really, really enjoy it. I want to keep it on my shelves because I really, really enjoyed it. But at the same time, it was so slow-paced. Like, I have never read a book that is as slow as A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It really is. You're following the life of this little girl. And when I say that, I mean, you are hearing about every detail of her day, from birth to when she goes to like college. It's so slow, and because of the pacing, I don't think I could ever get myself to pick it up again. But I still really enjoyed it and grew really attached to the character. So it's like I don't know what to do with it, because for the most part I'm trying to keep books on my shelves that I know I'm gonna reread, or that I'll look up notes for eventually, or like want to look at another paragraph in it to double check something. But I don't think I'm ever going to do that again with this book, but I enjoyed it enough that I still want it to be around for comfort, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that took me most of December and January to get through. It took forever. It was worth it, I think, for me for the most part, but I don't know if it would be worth it for other people to pick up, because it is just, I cannot tell you enough times how slow this book is. Then we have Prosper's Demon. This is another reread for me. I know I have to have talked about it in a previous wrap-up, but essentially you're following this exorcist who goes around just like exorcising demons out of people, and you have a limited number of demons in the world, and each demon has kind of a territory that it runs in, and each exorcist has a territory that they run in. And so throughout this book, you have this exorcist and this demon who are just constantly meeting up with one another. And the demon's just like, dude, like, please leave me alone. You've caused enough trouble in my life. This demon was actually inside the womb with this guy whenever, you know, he was being created. He was the bun in the oven, and this demon had joined him, and this demon realized that he was a natural born exorcist, and he's just like, oh crap. And so it was just a horrible 9 months for the demon who shared the womb with the exorcist baby. And there ends up being this big plan for how demons kind of want to take over the world, and there's not really anything that the exorcist can do about it, but he's going to try and do something about it anyways. It's very fun. I think it's a great little horror thriller, not even a thriller. It's just this fun horror novella that I think everyone should give a try. Alright, took a short break to finish getting the apartment together because I couldn't find the holes for anything and the screws were being frustrating. But we have a box, a fuzzy box. This is gonna take me another little bit, I think, because I have to put more of these guys in, which means a screw on either side, which is what I just had trouble with. Last book I read in January was Dark and Deepest Red. I don't remember how I'd found out about this book, but it had been on my Amazon wish list for a while, and then whenever I did the Secret Santa exchange with Victoria from what Victoria read, she got like a bunch of people together and they got to be put in like this random name generator, and we got to pick out who was going to be our Secret Santa. Or we were assigned to a Secret Santa, and my Secret Santa sent me 2 books. One of them was Dial A for Aunties, and the other one was Dark and Deepest Red. So Chris is gradually going to regret leaving me alone with this thing. I don't actually remember much of anything about it. I know it had to do with the dancing plague of the 1500s. I believe it was, or 1300s, and it was going back and forth with someone in modern day whose parents make shoes, and I honestly didn't get it. I know there's like some family stories in there, and the book was based around people who are Romani. I believe the author was Romani as well, and there was kind of the racial history of that, and I think they were all interesting enough elements, but I didn't understand how the stories came together. I didn't understand how the characters solved their problems because it just wasn't very solvable to me. I don't know. I just ended up being confused and underwhelmed. It was a young adult, which tends to be a genre that I struggle with. People say it's not a genre, which I guess it's not, but it is a particular style of writing that is made for a younger audience that just tends to not work for me, and this was one of those cases. We have Confessions by Kane Minoto. I think I heard about this from Victoria. I don't remember much about it now that I'm trying to think about it. I know I was doing my gradient puzzle at the time. So it was a puzzle with a giant rainbow gradient over it that I had to figure out. And I was listening to that book while I was doing the puzzle. And there was like, it was some sort of murder-suicide between the mom and the kid, and I feel like there was a school shooting. No, it wasn't a school shooting. A teacher's daughter was drowned, and the teacher knows that they were actually murdered, and they're going through the class, like, telling this story and trying to let the kids know that she knows who did it. And then there's also, like, a murder-suicide that happens between a mom and her kid. I don't remember who was the murderer, who was the suicide, that they're trying to figure out. Definitely tread carefully. It was not my favorite book. I didn't like the way that it talked about HIV, because HIV was like a big thing with that story, and like, oh, I'm gonna get revenge on you by giving you HIV, and this is how I'm gonna do it. And I don't know if the author didn't know that much about HIV, or if the author knew a lot about HIV and was using the fear of HIV/AIDS to drive the story. Either way, it didn't end up sitting very well with me. Then there was The Woman They Could Not Silence, which by far was my favorite book of February. That is Kate Moore's new book. It is phenomenal because Kate Moore is phenomenal. It is a nonfiction. It reads like a fiction because we get to hear like, oh, it was a really sunny day. Oh, this was how she was feeling. So we're following this woman. She is a wife and mother. She loves being a mother. Not so much being a wife, but she puts up with it because it's the times. It's like the 1800s. So in that period of time, you know, you have to put up with certain things. And one of those is having a bad husband. And this husband is so bad. He is like a pastor or something in one of the churches. And because she has different religious beliefs to him, and because she is trying to figure out like her own take on the Bible, and she's literate and everything, well, that's a problem. You can't be a woman and especially read the Bible and have your own thoughts. My goodness. So he puts her in a psych facility. And this whole book is like her friends trying to help get her out of there, and this discussion on sex and gender and morality and spirituality, and it was amazing, frankly. We'll read again. I would have to reread Radium Girls to figure out if I have a favorite, but I don't know that I do because they're both great. It is a very big book, but for as big as it was, and the fact that it was a nonfiction, I still finished it in less than a week, which really says something because most nonfiction usually takes me the better part of a month to get through. So you know it's got to be good, right? We are on to the second level, and I want you to know, despite what you may be seeing here, I do actually consider myself pretty solid at putting together furniture. You have all those memes and videos and stuff about how hard it is to put together furniture kits that you bring home. And honestly, most of them I don't think are nearly as complicated as people make them out to be. I'm just struggling with this particular one because finding a hole and putting it through into another hole that you can't see is complicated, for sure. But I'm solid at putting together furniture. Give me a kit of furniture, I can figure it out in an hour. Like, it's not too bad. I like to think that my talents get a little bit better with every piece of furniture that we buy. Anyways, the last book of February, because I only read 3, was Count of Monte Cristo. And let me tell you, I have feelings. My main thought when I think about that book is that I didn't give it enough of a chance. I believe I started reading it in December, and I did not finish it until February. It's like 1,000 pages or something. No, it's over 1,000 pages, depending on the edition you have. The physical edition that we have is my husband's edition, and it was abridged. And of course, I want to be a nerd and read the unabridged version. And the audiobook that I got for it was 47 hours long. 47 hours! And the thing is, the very first part of it, I'll gently spoil it for you, so if you decide to read it, you know the part that I'm talking about. The first major death that happens in the story, a character that I actually grew quite attached to. I really liked the relationship that they had going on with that character. And up until that point, you have this really consistent set of characters that we're meeting up with and talking with and everything. And then suddenly it skips forward 10 years. And when we do that, we end up forgetting about almost every character that we've met so far. And the main character, the Count of Monte Cristo, is a person who has changed drastically, or appears to have changed drastically, since the time that we knew him. So it's like I was really invested in this story, and then every single character just changes or disappears. So you can understand why I struggled with it a lot. And while it's a very good book and it does a great job of questioning whether revenge is really worth it, it's just like by the time I get to the end of it, it's far too long. Which I know at that time, you don't, like, there's no TV or anything, which is fine. People had other ways of entertaining themselves, but you traveled the world through books, and so that's why a lot of these books were so long. But I'm like, that 10-year gap, just, I didn't really care anymore, even though I was still enjoying the story. And there's so many characters that I end up losing track of who everyone is. So I feel like I should have liked it more than I did, and I put that down to just reader error on my part. I shouldn't have been frustrated and impatient that it was taking me 2 months to read. I should have just taken it in my own time, maybe kept notes or something. That is definitely a book you want to keep notes as you read to make sure you remember the relationship between everybody. Hey, so we're moving up in the world. We're on like the 3rd level of this guy, and speaking of moving up in the world, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the cat tower itself. And looking for a cat tower, the thing is when I go to the vet, there is this one room, and I hate being put in that room at the vet because they have this cat tower in the room that is way, way too small for my giant cats. Also, sorry, that's a little dark in this shot. I'm trying to figure out where I'm setting the camera. But besides having giant cats, I also have a disabled cat. Dimitri only has 3 legs to get him up and down towers. So Chris is on Reddit, and he hears about this cat tower that this guy got that is way too big for his needs because he has teeny tiny little cats and not giant monsters like I do. And Chris is like, oh hey, we should probably get this cat tower because we've looked at having it replaced at some point. The other thing with this style of cat tower with the gray fur and everything, it's pretty comfortable for them. Like, it's got a little bit of cushion to it, and it also, its levels are short enough from piece to piece that he can actually get up and down the tower pretty easily without like too much effort on his part. So just lowering you a little bit more to my level. We want him to be able to like climb up on the 1st level and climb up on the 2nd level and get up on the 3rd level. And some cat towers make that a lot harder for him, and some cat towers make that a lot easier for him. Or like our bed, he doesn't really get up on our bed anymore now that he's got more room in the house to explore. But it's really hard for him to get up on our bed because we already have the bed frame, and then we do like the double mattress thing. So it's just really high up off the ground, and in a couple of years we're gonna have to look at getting like cat stairs or something. So anyways, we have a disabled cat and we have giant cats, so we have to look for cat towers that are sized and leveled appropriately. Just for some sort of kind of frame of reference, Dimitri, the 3-legged guy, is about 11 pounds last we checked, and Amadeus is a whopping 16. So, Against White Feminism by Rafia Zakaria. I don't remember quite where she was from. I think it was Pakistan, if I remember correctly. But it's talking about how she would define white feminism and how she thinks feminism needs to expand on that, like how to improve on your feminism. I did really enjoy it. I liked her voice. I liked her writing style. One of the things that stood out to me is that, like, one of her best examples of white feminism that she put out there was that she, as a feminist speaker, was invited to this event, and her idea was that she would go to the event as an invited speaker and talk about feminism in Pakistan. If that's the right country. If it's the wrong country, I will correct myself in my edits. So she goes to this event, and one of the hosts that she finally finds, she's just like, oh, you're not like, why aren't you dressed in the native dress of your country? And she's just like, excuse me? So ends up that this event, no one told her, this event was made up of a bunch of different tables, and at each table was a person of color representing their country of origin, and each table was filled with tourist knickknacks and tourist photos, and the host of each table had to use these tourist gifts and photos and sell them and talk about their country of origin, and apparently wear the native dress of their country of origin. So needless to say, she was not too happy with this. Most of the guests who were going around the venue were white, and of course, like I just said, it's based around tourism, and it's just like, why would you do that to someone? Anyone? Like, first off, they don't have to dress in their native dress. A lot of that is going to come down to particular cultures and religions, which vary within the country. Tourist trap stuff that you're selling on each table, really? You think that's a great way to learn about someone's country? Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of tourist places that I want to go to, but they're tourist places for a reason. Like, they become our idea of what the country is rather than what the country actually is. And anyways, just listening to that part of the audiobook, I'm just like, what am I reading? Next one, The Husbands by Chandler Baker. I'd have to brush up a little bit on the plot again, but I want to put this on my to-do list of making a standalone review. I don't actually want to just pop it in here. It was a fascinating book. It was along the same lines as The Stepford Wives, and I have a lot to say on it, and it made me really think differently about certain things and examine my feminist beliefs a little more, to just be like, I'm not a great person, am I? But regardless, there is so much that I want to say on that book, and I don't think I'm going to say it all here. So I'm gonna put a pin in that and try and do a standalone review for it. Finished. He's right here in his little hammock. I have 2 more books to talk about still. Emily Ratajkowski's My Body. This is her memoir about her body, kind of her life as a model, times that she's dealt with sexual assault. It was a really quick read. I think it was only like a 5 or 6 hour audiobook. It was pretty basic. Like, it was decent writing, and I enjoyed the story. And I think it had important things to say, but it wasn't necessarily anything that I hadn't read before. So it was good, it was entertaining, but it didn't make like a huge impact for me. And then my absolute favorite book of the month was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I think she's had a couple of other books out. This is the first time that I've read her. I was looking at Coral from Pretty in Paper Cuts on her Twitter, and she was talking about how she just finished Near the Bone, and it was this like stuck in one place cold weather horror thriller, and I'm like, that sounds like exactly what I want right now. So I did go ahead and pick it up. I'll tell you right now, I bawled when I finished this book. I won't spoil it for you and tell you whether they were happy or sad tears, but if you want to read Near the Bone, I highly recommend the audiobook. It's not one that's read by the author from what I remember, but you have this woman who has been abused by her husband for so many years that she doesn't even really remember her own origin story. And as you're following her throughout this like couple of days that the story takes place, she's trying to remember where she came from, how she got here. There is a cryptid somewhere in the woods that's killing things, and she's trying to survive that while also trying to survive her husband and her abuse at the hands of him. And the audiobook, the author has this really, it's a very low kind of quiet voice, and the whole time that the narrator was reading, she had this tenseness in her voice that just kind of kept you on the edge, and she also sounded really sad, and it just, That voice was so good and just got me hooked. And it's like, I don't want to stop reading this book because I need to know that this character is going to be okay. I need to see it through to the end. I need to know what's going to happen to her. So, definitely one of my favorite books, possibly my top favorite book of the year so far. It was just so amazing. But that is going to be it from me. I can slip in my little Instagram story that I put on for Amadeus enjoying his tower. That's going to be it. So please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends. finished. He's right here in his little hammock. I have 2 more books to talk about still. Emily Ratajkowski's My Body. This is her memoir about her body, kind of her life as a model, times that she's dealt with sexual assault. It was a really quick read. I think it was only like a 5 or 6 hour audiobook. It was pretty basic. Like, it was decent writing and I enjoyed the story. And I think it had important things to say, but it wasn't necessarily anything that I hadn't read before. So it was good, it was entertaining, but it didn't make like a huge impact for me. And then my absolute favorite book of the month was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I think she's had a couple of other books out. This is the first time that I've read her, but I was looking at Coral and her like posts on Twitter, and I was looking at Coral from Pretty in Paper Cuts on her Twitter, and she was talking about how she just finished Near the Bone, and it was this like stuck in one place cold weather horror thriller, and I'm like, that sounds like exactly what I want right now. So I did go ahead and pick it up. I'll tell you right now, I bawled when I finished this book. I won't spoil it for you and tell you whether they were happy or sad tears, but if you want to read Near the Bone, I highly recommend the audiobook. It's not one that's read by the author from what I remember, but you have this woman who has been abused by her husband for so many years that she doesn't even really remember her own origin story. And as you're following her throughout this like couple of days that the story takes place, she's trying to remember where she came from, how she got here. There is a cryptid somewhere in the woods that's killing things, and she's trying to survive that while also trying to survive her husband and her abuse at the hands of him. And the audiobook, the author has this really, it's a very low kind of quiet voice, and the whole time that the narrator was reading, she had this tenseness in her voice that just kind of kept you on the edge, and she also sounded really sad, and it just, that voice was so good and just got me hooked. And it's like, I don't want to stop reading this book because I need to know that this character is going to be okay. I need to see it through to the end. I need to know what's going to happen to her. So definitely one of my favorite books, possibly my top favorite book of the year so far. It was just so amazing. But that is going to be it from me. I can slip in my little Instagram story that I put on for Amadeus enjoying his tower. But that's going to be it. So please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.